Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
7:06 on O'Connor and Company. Super busy Monday after the Super Bowl. Let's get right to it. 7:35, Bethany Mandel running for Montgomery County School Board. 8:05, Andy Paulin from ESPN 630 to talk about the actual game of football. Imagine that. 8:15, Brent Bozell, Media Research Center. And then at 8:35, Lou Groziak, Daily Wire. That's a lot coming up. I'm Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. And Julie, there's a lot right now because we have finally, I've been waiting since Thursday afternoon, Joe diGenova, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, former special prosecutor as well. And Joe, that report from the special prosecutor investigating Joe Biden's illegal use of classified documents was a stunner. Just take it away. Start us off here with your summary of what was decided, what was in that document, and what's next.
Well, what was decided was that the president stole, and I underscore the word stole, classified documents as a United States senator. He had no right to them. He took them from a SCIF in the United States Capitol, the famous Atomic Energy Room, which is the SCIF in the ceiling of the Capitol. He kept them in unsecured locations from 1974 until the last few months. He stole documents while Vice President of the United States and used them as a private citizen. He disclosed classified information to individuals, and he's going to get a pass. And I don't object to the president getting no pass in general, but if you're going to do that, then you must dismiss the case against President Trump. There simply is no comparison. Donald Trump was the president of the United States. He had the power to declassify, which Joe Biden never had at any time during his unlawful possession of stolen classified information. The case against the president cannot stand. And I hope that in Florida, in that case, his lawyers make use of the Robert Hur report to file a motion to dismiss for selective prosecution, which is very difficult to win for very good reasons, because obviously there are many, many reasons why prosecutors bring cases. But in this instance, I think a court can conclude that there has been selective prosecution and that the case against the president in Florida must be dismissed.
Joe, this is brilliant, and thank you for pausing there because we haven't even gotten down to the dementia part, and I do want to spend time on that. But you saw the apologists for Biden over the weekend, the people who were literally paid to lie on Joe Biden's behalf, say, oh, no. The biggest difference between Joe Biden's handling of classified documents and Donald Trump's is that Joe Biden cooperated fully with the prosecutor throughout the entire process. They'll say that's the only distinction. Is that the only distinction? Because you just laid out quite a few distinctions, not least of which the fact that Joe Biden never had the right to have access to those documents when he was a senator.
Well, let me just say this. The president himself and his representatives came out late in the evening for him. 7:30 or 8, whatever it was, is very late for our current president. So be careful. We don't want a war to start while he's asleep. Right. The bottom line is this. The people who came out on his behalf and the president himself lied to the American people. The president lied repeatedly at his news conference. And then they sent out the next day Ian Sams, this little pajama boy from the White House counsel's office, who is not a lawyer, who stood there and lied repeatedly about what the report found, what the consequences were, and what the president said. And it's very interesting. You will recall that some of the reporters said, we'd like to have some of the lawyers from the White House counsel's office come out and talk to us.
They didn't.
That's not going to happen, and there's a reason for that. They sent Sams out because he can lie, because he's not a lawyer. If the White House counsel's office had come out, any of the lawyers, and said what Sams said, they would be subject to disciplinary proceedings before the D.C. bar. So they sent out this little pajama boy, Ian Sams. I hope they continue to send him out repeatedly. And the American people can see this little wimp, this little pajama boy. He's like almost all the people around the president. They barely sound like men.
I love it. Joe, Section 4 of the 25th Amendment says that if the president is no longer able to perform his or her duties, he can be removed. I mean, that is an official Department of Justice report that says that Joe Biden is obviously suffering from decline, cognitive decline. Will Congress move on this?
No, they won't. And they're probably not going to have to, because I have to say, I think this report was the single most damaging thing that has happened to Joe Biden since he has been president. Merrick Garland released this report. Remember, this was not a report to the public. This was a report from Robert Hur to the Attorney General. Mm-hmm. It is a confidential report. Garland did not have to release this. He could have refused. He could have engaged in a protracted legal battle with Congress over its release. He didn't do that. He released it. He released it unedited. Mm-hmm. He left everything in there. So you ask yourself, why did Garland do that? Mm. And the answer is exactly the same reason that Robert Hur wrote this report. Robert Hur wrote this report because during the interviews with the president and the lawyers for the president, they dissed Robert Hur. They treated him like trash. They insulted him behind the scenes by the manner in which they dealt with him. Some of the worst lawyering you have ever seen in your life, and the president of the United States was lucid enough to think that he could go in and act even worse than he is mentally for the special counsel. I think Robert Hur had it up to his scuppers with them, and he just decided he was going to unload.
Joe, it goes without saying that we're going to want you for a second segment here because there's so much that we have to talk about. But I do want to draw to your attention these liars on behalf of the Biden administration who decided not just to lie about the report and lie about Joe Biden, but then went on the attack against Mr. Hur, the special prosecutor. Listen, this is rich irony. Listen to this on MSNBC.
Do you think this is this putting the thumb on the scale, or do you feel like it'll wash away?
I mean, I think that the point of this report was to put the thumb on the scale. And remember, Hur worked in the Trump administration.
Yes, he did.
This guy is a partisan.
Right.
Wow.
And what you realize is that Democrats are not ready for a Republican Party that is so hyper-partisan, that is so involved. I mean, look at the House of Representatives. Right. They have run that like a campaign arm of the Trump campaign. Mm-hmm. And I really think that we are in a situation now where Democrats have to, you can't put a Republican to do one of these investigations because they're not acting in good faith. I mean, Hur is not a neurologist. He's not a doctor, right? I mean, his editorializing about Biden is completely irrelevant, and it was set up in a way to deliver right-wing talking points.
There you go. Robert Hur, partisan, MAGA hat wearing Trump maniac who was sending right-wing talking points. Is that the Robert Hur you're familiar with, Joe?
Well, he's a seasoned career prosecutor who was taken out of private practice by Merrick Garland to take this role on. He was chosen because he has a very good reputation for being even-handed.
Wasn't he one of Robert Mueller's investigators?
Yes, he was.
Come
on.
Yes,
he was. He also worked. Yes, he was one of the stars of the Robert Mueller non-prosecution investigation. But here's the thing that Democratic lying talking point person doesn't realize. Robert Hur did, in his opinion and his report out loud, what prosecutors do every day. They make judgments about the mental acuity of potential defendants, about the veracity of evidence and witnesses and documents. What he did was put in writing what he is required to put in writing by the Attorney General. Remember, this was a report to the Attorney General, not to the public. Garland could have edited this. He could have kept it quiet. Of course, that would have been the end of Garland. I mean, Garland boxed himself in. Perhaps he did so purposely. Perhaps he wanted to be put in the position where he could diss the president, Garland, after the president had dissed Garland repeatedly, after Garland played the footstool for him for 3 years. This is a good report. It's full of fascinating historical detail.
Yeah.
And included in it are documents which show that in 2015, Joe Biden was using classified information to help Hunter Biden with Burisma. It's really fascinating.
Ooh, hold that thought, because I missed that in the coverage, and I'm betting a lot of our listeners did as well if I missed it. But, Joe, hang on. I want you to explore that a little further in just a moment. First, though, it's 7:16 on a busy 7 o'clock hour here on a Monday. Let's get to Jamie Whitten in the Hadig carpet cleaning. By the way, another lie. We'd been told, Joe diGenova, by the Biden administration, by the White House counsel's office for months now, that we were only talking about 6 or 7 documents. There were hundreds of documents that were classified that the president, the former vice president, I should say, and former senator should not have had in his possession. They were unsecure. But you just mentioned in this report that there was a certification that in 2015 he utilized some of this classified information to help his son Hunter and his relationship with Burisma. Can you flesh that out for me?
Yes, among the documents which were seized from the stolen documents, by the way, these are stolen documents. Remember that. These are not documents that he ever had the authority to declassify or have in his possession. The only way he got these documents from 1974 on was he stole them. Yeah. He took them. This nonsense about them being accidentally picked up by members of the staff is absolute BS. Among the documents that were uncovered by HERS investigators were emails recovered from Hunter Biden's abandoned laptop, which talk about key initiatives by Burisma while Biden's son served as a board member at the company. There are memorandums in there, U.S. government memorandums, confidential, some highly classified, one entitled U.S. Energy Assistant to Ukraine, which the vice president from his staff and dated September 17th, 2014. There are several documents like that inside the trove of documents, and they relate directly to the countries in which Joe Biden's son, Hunter, was doing business.
Wow.
This has implications well beyond, and the Oversight Committee has already requested access to these documents. Now there's going to be a fight because Garland's going to do everything he can not to turn them over because of the disaster that the HER report has been for them. This is not going to get any better for Biden. This is going to get worse. And this may be the thing that forces somebody, it can't, to come forward and say, Joe, you got to step aside. This is over. You can't do this.
Also, I want to point out a Politico article this weekend. Frustration within the White House at Garland has been growing steadily. Last year, Biden privately denounced how long the probe into his son was taking, telling aides and outside allies that he believed the stress could send Hunter Biden spiraling back into addiction. Elder Biden, people said, told those confidants that Garland should not have eventually empowered a special counsel. In recent weeks, Biden has grumbled to aides and advisors that Garland had Garland moved sooner in his investigation into former President Donald Trump's election interference, a trial may already be underway or even have concluded, according to two people. He's granted anonymity to discuss private matters. In other words, he's upset that that the trial is taking too long for political purposes. I mean, this is
all of those reasons that you heard from those people are the reasons why Robert Hur wrote his report.
Yeah,
they dissed him in private, just like they are dissing Merrick Garland right now.
Yeah.
And I know, and I will say this about Merrick Garland. He is a strange and different man than he was over the last 30 years. And I will bet you that he saw this and heard this criticism of him over the last 3 years, and he may have just said, you know what? This report's coming out just the way it is. I'm not going to make any edits. I'm not going to make any changes. And I believe that this is now reaching a boiling point with the president, because the president, who is a habitual liar, is surrounded by hacks. That includes everybody in the White House counsel's office, everybody in the comms office, and everybody in the policy offices around the president. These are hacks. These are not noble, good government-seeking people.
Yeah.
These are hacks and liars, power-hungry thugs from the bottom to the top.
Joe, one last question. We keep talking about mishandling, misuse of classified documents. You point out that these were stolen classified documents. The second those documents left his Senate office building, they were stolen. Why aren't we talking about the Espionage Act? You know, Donald Trump is not facing charges with regard to solely mishandling of classified documents or possession of classified documents, which I think is already objectionable since he was president. But he's facing charges on the Espionage Act. How does Joe Biden not face charges on the Espionage Act?
Well, first of all, under DOJ policy, the Department of Justice takes the position that you cannot indict a sitting president.
Oh, right.
However, they didn't have any problem indicting a former president in the case of Donald Trump, and they could have done so with Joe Biden when his term or terms of office is over or are over. He clearly violated the Espionage Act when he purloined the documents in 1974 from the Senate SCIF. He violated the Espionage Act. When he stored them improperly at the Biden Penn Center, in his garage, at a rented home in Virginia, at his home in Wilmington, Delaware, he violated the Espionage Act.
Yep.
So he is definitely violated the Espionage Act.
Sounds like a high crime, or at the very least a misdemeanor. Joe, real fast, will Joe Biden be on the ticket for the Democrats as their nominee this November?
He will not.
Thank you, Joe. Great talking with you as always, my friend.
105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
7:37, and we are keeping our sights set on that big 8 o'clock hour coming up when we started off with 8:05. Andy Pollin from ESPN 630 talk about the actual football game. We haven't talked much about the football game. We just talked about
Usher.
The ads and Usher and Ludacris and Little John and Tay-Tay and there was a football game.
I heard.
8:15, Brent Bozell, and at 8:35, Luke Rosiak of the Daily Wire. I'm Larry O'Connor. She is Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
And here's a dear friend of this program. In fact, oftentimes we've known her to be sitting in that very chair you're sitting in right now, Julie Gunlock, before she had her 17th child. And she joins us now with a huge announcement. Bethany Mandel for school board. I'm so excited, Bethany.
You're more excited than my husband is, that's for sure.
I bet. So you're going to run for school board in Montgomery County. Good Lord, they certainly need your wisdom and your insights there. Tell me about the seat you're running in. Is this countywide or is this just for a district you're in? And what's the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm running in District 4 because that's where I live, but anyone can vote for me. There's a primary election in May, which I have to win to be on the general ballot.
Okay.
And I'm running because of the people who are on the ballot with me, actually, in District 4. That's what inspired me.
Tell us about them.
Oh, I will. So, I mean, basically the question is, do you think the Montgomery County School Board and MCPS is going in the right direction? If you think that is the case, then these are the candidates for you. We have Shebra Evans, who has been the longest serving member of the school board. She's been there since 2016. Or you have a newcomer who is beloved by the machine here, named Laura Stewart, who stood outside of the Board of Education meeting supporting the right of the school board to deny parents the right to say, no, I don't want you to read Pride Puppy to my kindergarten child. So that's the choice facing Montgomery County residents. Do you want more of the status quo, or do you think maybe it's time to shake things up a little bit because things are going in the wrong direction?
Bethany Mandel joins us. She's running for Montgomery County School Board. And Bethany, you do live in one of the most left-leaning parts of Montgomery County, which is kind of, Montgomery County is already kind of in trouble, but you live in isn't Raskin like your neighbor over there?
He probably is. Truth be told, I like him, actually.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say that on the show?
But I know you're very tolerant and even supportive of some Democrats, but they won't let you get away with that, Bethany. And that's what I'm wondering. First of all, have you had to have asked people in your community, in maybe your faith-based circle or other moms that you know, you must have taken their temperature on this. What was the reaction when you heard from, diehard Democrats in your neighborhood that you are running?
Things are so bad in Montgomery County that people were not immediately dismissive of the idea. Okay. They are so desperate to see change and to see someone who will stand up in a Board of Education meeting and say, maybe we shouldn't spend $500,000, which is what they did, to fight parents in order to force their children to read Pride Puppy. And that's just one example. They have lit so much money on fire. Take the resignation of the most recent superintendent. She got a golden parachute, and her interim, who was forced to leave her last job, is also making bank. The amount of money they have lit on fire, every single Montgomery County taxpayer, of which I am one, should be horrified that they are wasting all of this money instead of focusing on student achievement and test scores and safety, all of which are frighteningly low.
You know, Bethany, I think there is this point where people just say, I can't take it anymore. And, you know, I live in Alexandria, Virginia. It is just, you know, like Montgomery County, it is a mess. And we actually have someone who works for Randy Weingarten on the school board in Alexandria, Virginia. And it just amazes me. Are the people of Montgomery County there? Are they, you kind of mentioned, you know, things are so bad that people are not immediately dismissive. Are they there? And also, they're going to smear you. I'm reading this article about
they've already
you
started.
Where, you know, it's funny because they think that the fact that you were against masks is a sort of a knock against you. And I'm like, how is that a knock against you? But where are they going to target you? What are they going to do? And how do you convince people that this is just a smear tactic?
So it's funny, when I told close friends that I was thinking about this, they said, you are probably the best person to withstand all of this because you've been getting this your entire career. And it's true. So anecdotally on Twitter, the thing I've been getting thrown at me is a column I wrote in the summer of 2017, we should befriend neo-Nazis. And it's the same tactic they always take. They take a screenshot. Right. But if you actually read the column, it's something all Montgomery County students should read because it says, you know, you should treat people with love and kindness and try to change their hearts and minds through that love and kindness. That, to me, is the peak Montgomery County message. But my opponents are smearing it, as usual, something I'm very used to in my career, as painting me as sympathetic to Nazis, an Orthodox Jewish woman, which, by the way, let's also have a conversation about raging anti-Semitism in Montgomery County Public Schools right now. That's part of my platform. So it's funny that they're smearing me as a Nazi when that is literally part of my campaign platform as a Jewish woman. Yeah,
of course it is. And listen, the difference between you, Bethany, and the left in Montgomery County is that you're right. This is the kind of, it's peak Montgomery County, the idea that you love somebody, embrace them, tolerate them so you can help soften their heart and actually move them and persuade them. You actually believe that. They don't. They use language like that as a weapon, and I listen. I'm in full support of this. I can't wait to see how this plays out. And we look forward to speaking with you on this program, as well as your opponents in the primary. Bring it on. Yeah. We'll have fine conversations.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Beth. Where can people go to support your campaign?
Thank you. I was going to throw that in there. So Bethany 4 BOE.com, the same Twitter, Bethany 4 BOE. We don't have a donation page up yet. Folks can sign up on the website and get alerted when that's up. This was a last-minute decision I filed on Friday at the literally last possible appointment because I wanted to see who else threw their hat in the ring, and no one else acceptable did so. So I chose to run. But yeah, those are the two places, and I beg people to donate because we really desperately need change on the school board.
Game on. Let's go. Listen, there's one thing about complaining about things and you know, whining about it with your friends or writing something on Facebook or even writing a column about it. Bethany is now taking the next step, and that's getting in the game. She's in the arena. She's running for office. Let's make this happen. Well done, Bethany. Very proud of you. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
7:44.
Visit uline.com.
So, this morning, we're doing our show prep meeting that we do bright and dark and early, an hour before we go on the air. And I said to Julie, did you see that story about the mass shooting incident at Joel Osteen's church down in Texas?
I did not.
And you had not seen it?
I had not seen any news on it.
Why had you not seen any news on it? Well, this is why.
So approximately at 1:53 p.m., a female, approximately 30, 35 years old, entered the property on the west side here in the parking lot of Lakewood Church. She entered the building. She was armed with a long rifle and a trench coat with a backpack, accompanied by a small child, approximately 4 to 5 years old. Once she entered, at some point she began to fire. I want to compliment the off-duty officers who were working extra employment here. One TABC agent, 4 years of service, 38 years old. An HPD off-duty officer, 28 years old, 2 years of service. Both officers, officer and agent, engaged, striking the female. She's deceased here on the scene. Unfortunately, the 5-year-old kid was hit and is at critical condition at our local hospital. There was a 57-year-old man who didn't have anything to do with it, I don't think, was shot in the leg. He's seeking treatment in the hospital.
All right. So, and obviously, this poor young child is in our prayers, and we sure hope the little boy recovered. Little child, I should say. I don't know why I assume it's a boy. Should recover. But this could have been a horrific scene. There could have been mass casualties. There could have been multiple people murdered by this obviously deranged lunatic with a rifle in a trench coat with a backpack using a child for a human shield. It didn't, though. It didn't end up that way because there were two good guys with a gun. Let me rephrase it. Because this church wasn't a gun-free zone.
That's right.
That's why this didn't happen.
That's right.
And
off-duty police officers.
And nothing is discussed. And it's like, and not only is it a great way to like funnel some money to off-duty police officers so they can make some money, because when you first start, first 5, 6, 7 years on the force, you're not making a ton of money. You never really make a ton of money, let's face it, but until you get seniority, it's not only good for them to be able to earn some money, but you also have trained professionals. You could have ex-military do this as armed security guards who were there in case something bad happens. Why is it okay for this church in Texas, Joel Osteen's church in Texas? Why is it, we have this wonderful happy ending now of what could have been a tragedy, and this isn't okay for our public schools, where we could so easily employ off-duty officers or retired military.
Or trained teachers, many of whom are willing to carry and get training and go through all sorts of background checks, so that if someone walks through the doors, they're not sitting ducks.
Right.
You think about what happened down in Texas with those kids being killed and the police standing outside. There was no one in that building to help those kids. So why not consider that?
Why not? Because they're not actually trying to save people's lives.
Because moms demand action.
Yeah.
That's why.